Hi, I wanted to share with you a recipe I found not too long ago that I really like, and it uses sourdough starter discard. So if you're into doing sourdough breads and things, you'll understand. If not, I'll explain it to you. When you make a sourdough starter from scratch, you over time, course of about 7 days, you have to discard part of it from the day before and then add more flour and water to feed it. So the discard part you can throw away, or I have been saving it, and I discard about a half a cup at a time. So it took a few days to save up enough for this recipe. And this is a cracker that's made strictly with the sourdough discard. So I have about 340 grams, and I will again, but I have previously posted information about weighing instead of measuring certain things, and most recipes will be more consistent if you weigh rather than measure by volume your ingredients. So I've got my sourdough starter discard, and then I'm going to add 113 or about a half a cup, 113 grams or about a half a cup of butter that has been melted and cooled to room temperature. You have to have it cooled or it won't incorporate well into the starter. So you can melt it and then let it sit for a while. And then I'm going to just get this incorporated. You can use a whisk if you're good with a whisk, or you can use a wooden spoon or a scraper, or whatever works for you. But you want it to be fully incorporated. And you'll see in this case, it is, the butter's going in perfectly. If the butter was too warm and it doesn't look like it's incorporating smoothly, you put the whole thing in the fridge for a little while and try again. So I'm going to get this all mixed around really well. Then I'm going to add 80 grams of grated fresh Parmesan cheese. I've never tried this with like the kind that comes in the green circular container. I don't know if it would work with that or not. This is freshly grated Parmesan cheese. And about 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Maybe not quite. I used salted butter, and of course the Parmesan is a little bit salty too, so you don't have to overdo the salt. So I just have it fully mixed, and that's all. So it's just your starter, sourdough starter discard, melted butter, Parmesan cheese, freshly grated Parmesan cheese, and salt. And then I have, if you have a half a sheet pan size or a large cookie sheet, line it with parchment paper. Don't try to do this without parchment paper. Line it with parchment paper, and then we're just going to spread this as evenly as possible in the pan. You want to get it as even as you can so you don't have any high spots that are thicker. It just takes a little practice to play with it so that it doesn't crinkle up the paper. After you do it a time or two, you get kind of used to it. Just kind of keep going over it to smooth it and spread it evenly on the whole pan. You could probably cut this in half if you want to make a smaller batch. And then it would take you less time to save up your starter discard. I have my oven already preheating to 325. So I'm just kind of going over and over it because I'm trying to make sure I don't have any high spots that are going to not cook at the same time as the rest. Okay, so you probably can see it pretty well. So I'm going to put it in the oven, and then partway through I'm going to take it out and score it with a pizza cutter and put it back in to finish, and that way it'll cut easily when it's done. So come back in a little bit for the scoring part. Hi, we're halfway through with the Buttery Parmesan sourdough discard crackers, which is made with the discard from sourdough starter. And I am going to just score this now. Excuse the barking. Quinn. Bull terrier puppy that wants to go outside because I started talking. So I'm just scoring this with a pizza cutter, and it's going to go back in the oven and bake some more. But this will make it easier to cut the crackers when they're done and crispy. I'm making them fairly small, like Triscuit size. They're a very rich cracker. Okay, so now it just goes back in the oven. I'll show you what it looks like scored. And it goes back in the oven, and then come back and we'll look at them when they're done. Hi, we're back. The crackers baked for 30 minutes. I took them out and I scored them, and then I baked them another 30 minutes. I actually turned the heat down a little bit because they were browning a little quicker than I wanted them to. So now they've cooled for a little while, and I'm going to go back over where I scored them, and you'll see that they pretty much break exactly the way I want them to. Hopefully you can kind of see that. According to the recipe, if you didn't score them partway through, that's okay. You could just crack them. I kind of like them kind of neater than just breaking them into chunks. And you'll notice I took them off the pan to do the final cutting. Otherwise, you can't quite get all the way to the edge. So really, once you do this rest score, and I just want to show you how nice and crisp these are. It's a really good cracker. It's very buttery, probably pretty rich. Again, it was sourdough starter discard and melted butter that had been cooled, and salt. That's about it. I will post the recipe. And again, this is only going to be something you can do if you have starter dough sourdough starter that you're using, and it's made with the discard. Okay, I'll post a recipe later.